Okay, I'm going to show you how to put a paper clip onto an MMA fighter, and I really have nothing planned, so let's just Google. Actually, this is DuckDuckGo. I type in MMA guy and go to images, and I'm just looking for someone who's going to be easy. Um, Brock Laser. Brock will be pretty easy. This is 1308 by 2000, and I'm going to click on that to bring. Oops, that didn't work. Click on that to bring up the image. And what I'm going to do is right click and copy image. And then we go to Photoshop and we go File, New. Now if you look here, it's taking that clipboard data and making a new PSD, another Photoshop document. And as you can see, it's also 1308 by 2000. So we press Create, and we can Control V as in Victor, or you can go Edit, Paste, which is Control V. So there's Brock. Now let's find a paper clip. So I go to my shoops and I type in Clippy PNG, and I don't know which one. We'll pick Clippy Longstockings, and we'll resize it to whatever. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Now here we have Brock. Oh, let me show you something. In order to rename these things, you double click on the words and you type in Brock. Generally you don't have to do that, but it's good form. It's good form to do that. Now what we want to do is select like here, all the way to the edge, and like that. And I'm just eyeballing this. I'm taking a wild guess. Now what we want to do is fill this, make this the inside of his body, and then we're going to clone out his chin and his head, so it'll look like he has no head. And we're going to do this. We're going to right click this and duplicate layer, and then we're going to press the mask button. And as you notice, I have a 1 pixel feather. We could probably go 2 since this is a larger one, but I'm just going to leave it at 1. Now we have a mask, and if I press Control, we can see where the mask is. Pressing Control D to deselect, and if I click Alt, we can see the mask. So this is the mask. White reveals and black conceals, so it's going to just show what's in here. And what I want to do is take Brock, unlink him from here, and make sure Brock, oops, I clicked too hard. Click on Brock, make sure Brock is selected, make sure that that is not selected or that you're clicked over here. Make sure you're clicked on Brock, and we're going to move him around. And this may be a little more difficult, but it's going to be fine. We're just going to pick a region. Okay, that looks pretty good, and we're going to lock it back up. Now, we want to make this the inside of his neck, so we're going to, on top of Brock, we're going to create a layer, and we'll call that cloning. You can clone on top of Brock, but I like to cloning. I like to clone on a different layer. That's up to you. You can clone right on here, or you can clone on your cloning layer. And what we want to do, of course, here, I'm pressing square bracket. The right square bracket makes the brush bigger, and lower one makes it smaller. And we pick our clone tool. Now what we need is a sample point. So we're going to click here on the line, and we just selected that area as our clone source, and we're going to make it a little smaller to fit in here, and we're just going to paint into Brock, and we're going to make it even smaller in here, to get that region. And here we're going to have to clone, let's just say, this part of his skin. And as you can see, we're lining it up. You don't want it to be up here, you want it to be down here. And we're going to clone in that. And maybe bring this darkness up. And you can zoom in. I'm zooming in with my mouse wheel. You could also zoom in with zoom out with Control minus, zoom in with Control plus. And we're going to get just a little tiny knob right here. Now we got to get the rest of Brock, and that should be pretty easy because it's mainly just a black background. So I sample over here, and we just start painting in Brock. We could actually make the brush bigger. I'm resampling and just painting in Brock using the clone tool. Now it's best to start on this side because the lighting might be different. You don't want to take the light from that side. You want to take the light from this side. Lighting. And we're just going to keep cloning in. I'm resampling different areas. There we go. Okay, so now we have the inside of his neck, and Brock's head is gone. Now I want to refine this mask because I don't like the way it looks. Let me take it off a second. Put it back on. Okay, so I'm gonna take a black brush, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and make sure that it's totally soft. This is soft, this is hard, so we want totally soft. And using a black paintbrush, making it smaller using square bracket, we're just going to guess to where this goes and smooth it out. That's starting to look pretty good. And I want to paint a little more in, so watch here. I press X, the black will turn to white. And I want to bring this down just a little bit. And we're just painting some in. Oops, that didn't come out good. Control Z to undo. And we'll make that just a little more round. Okay, so now we have the inside of his body, and that looks starting to look pretty good. This would be like looking into his neck. I mean, we could put a piece of meat right there too if we wanted, but that's not what I'm going to do. So what we want to do is make this darker. And in order to make it darker, we click this button, which is your layer adjustment, or creates layer adjustment layers. And we click on curves. Okay, so now we have curves on top of Brock's neck. Let's actually call this double click to rename Brock's neck so we don't get confused. Now we have a curves layer on top of Brock, but we want this curves layer to only affect the neck. We don't want it to affect his body and the background. So in order to do that, you put the mouse cursor on this line, and watch it now. When I press Alt, it turns into that doohickey. Now if I move it off of this line, it goes away, and when I put it on this line, it stays. I'm holding the Alt key, and watch. Oops, hang on. Watch right here. I put my mouse there, and I press Alt, and this makes this down arrow. That means this curves layer will only affect his neck, so it will only affect this region. I take the midtones. This is mids, this is highlights, this is shadows, and I'm just going to do a quick brightness adjustment or curves adjustment to make that darker. But as you see, when it does that, it makes it really red. So what we want to do is click the layer adjustment layer icon. I'll get that right before we know it, and click hue saturation and do the same thing. We want to make this a clipping mask. We could do the same thing here, or as you see, when I made the hue and saturation layer, it brings up the properties box for the hue and saturation. you can also click that button. That creates a clipping mask. Now we want to desaturate the reds. So we'll go to reds and desaturate them. And we'll also lighten them some to make them darker. And just one more thing I want to do, and this is a little more advanced. I want to create another layer, clip it to here, and I want to take kind of like one of these colors. So with my paintbrush selected, I press Alt and I sample that color. But I want it darker, so I double click on this and I'm going to make it darker. I'm not really being very accurate. I'm just having a dark color with a little bit of this red tone in it. What I want to do is paint in here, because when light comes in here, it'll be lighter. Let me actually get a mouse pointer here. When light comes in here, it'll be lighter here and it'll get darker the deeper we go. So we're just going to paint some darkness in here. And we're going to use what's called flow to do this. Right now we're at 100% opacity and 100% flow. Let me make another layer just to quickly show you what that means. With a large brush at 100% opacity and 100% flow, and I'm just going to remember where that was. Actually no, we'll just use that color. You'll see it's 100% opaque and feathered on the edges, because it's feathered on the edges because it's a soft brush. Now let me undo that. Control Z, and I'm going to change the opacity down to 50% and just make that same brush stroke. And as you see, it makes it 50% opacity. Control Z, put that back to 100. Now I'm going to turn it down to 1% flow and brush on. And the more I brush, the darker it gets. Okay, there's a reason I'm showing you this. On this layer that is clipped to the neck, I want to paint some darkness, but I want it to be darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. So I'm just going to start brushing in, and as I go up, it's going to paint over that darkness, so it's going to make it darker. So now we have dark at the bottom and getting lighter at the top. And now that looks a lot better. That looks a lot better. It looks like light is coming in here. And for our final step, we're going to put Clippy in there. We click on the Clippy layer, Clippy long stockings, edit, free transform, and we place Clippy right there. Now we want Clippy to go into the neck, so we don't want this part to show up. And in order to do that, just take your polygonal lasso, which is this one. You can use other tools. This is just the one I'm going to use. And we just kind of trace around here. Doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but you don't want it to be sloppy by the same token. And around here, we're just selecting all of this region because it really doesn't matter. This part is going to show up. This part is not going to show up. So now we have it, and we select Clippy long stockings, and we press mask. So now there you are. If you want to resize this, you could click this icon. This unlinks the mask. Now let me show you what that does. I'm clicking it back on. Right now, if I want to edit, free transform Clippy, it's going to transform the mask and Clippy. So it's not going to work out right. Well, I guess you can get it kind of right. But the best way to do it would be to unlink Clippy from the mask. Make sure you're clicked on oops, I double clicked on Clippy. I clicked too fast. Make sure you're clicked on Clippy and that you're not clicked on the mask or you're not clicked over there. Make sure you're clicked on Clippy and go edit, free transform, and that will resize Clippy inside of that mask. So you can make Clippy bigger if you like. Anyway, that's one way of doing a head removal and making kind of a three-dimensional neck and plopping Clippy in. Hope that helps.